Good afternoon. We're back in session and we'll continue with our agenda with the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee led by Ms. Amy White. Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back after the lunch break. We have an exciting agenda this afternoon. I want to recognize my Vice Chair, Jill Kamnitz. Together with her, we have several items for your consideration on the agenda today. We'll start with EICS 1, which is a request from Telra Institute. That's one of our charter schools that is scheduled to open this fall in Mecklenburg County. And it came before the Charter School Advisory Board with a request to increase their enrollment even though it has not yet opened. It's important to note, folks, that the Charter School Advisory Board did review the request and decided to move forward with a denial of that request to increase its enrollment. And that is before us. Mr. Machado, you want to give us a brief summary on this?
Yes, Ms. White, thank you very much. You did a great job explaining that. This was actually the second enrollment grade change that Telra had made to the Charter School Advisory Board. And the first one was granted. And after reviewing this, it was the Charter School Advisory Board's recommendation that they just not be granted, and then for them to concentrate on just getting open and let's see what the enrollment looks like after the first year. So our office is very pleased that this was not recommended to increase their enrollment.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Are there any questions from board members about the denial of this request from Telra Institute to increase its enrollment this year? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move to EICS 2, which is the first item under action for this month. This is a request from Kestrel Heights to amend its mission statement, a change to its lunch program and new transportation plans. Board members, we had this discussion last month. I do have folks ready to answer any question. Does anyone at the board table have a question about Kestrel Heights' request to amend its mission statement and the other items as mentioned? Okay, that'll be before us for approval tomorrow. Let's turn to EICS 3, which are the 2020 Charter School Advisory Board Charter School application recommendations for the coming year. I'm sorry. Actually, should say 2021. There are 5 schools before us for approval. They are Central Carolina Academy Charter, Triangle Math and Science Academy, Bonnie Cone Leadership Academy, American Leadership Academy, and Dogwood Classical Academy. Board members, during last month's meeting, you had an opportunity to ask questions to the staff of OCS and the previous month to follow up with any questions. Does any board member have a question on any of the 5 that have been submitted for approval for this year? Okay, hearing none, then those 5 schools will be before us tomorrow for approval. EICS 4 is a presentation from Wilmington School of the Art in a request to revise the grades that they serve. It is not an a request for increase for enrollment, rather a request to add some additional grades in hopes that they could accommodate siblings. I have Mr. Machado here to answer any questions about this particular request. Not hearing any, we'll turn to EICS 5. This is the 2021 Charter School application timeline and process, application and review. Board members, just as a little background information, this rule, 16 NCAC OCG, that's a lot of numbers and letters together. But the charter school application and review process is back before us for final approval this month. And this rule it codifies parts of the charter school application process. So among the changes, you can see that the first paragraph used to say that the board would approve a non-refundable fee annually. And the Rules Review Commission, has been busy at work these past couple of months. Consider that particular language to be too vague. So therefore, they've changed the rule to specify that the non-refundable application fee will be $1,000. We discussed this at the last board meeting. That change was deemed to be a substantial change, and it required republication. So, following the republication, we did not receive any new public comments on the rule, and no one attended a public hearing that was held on March 31st. So we're recommending today the adoption of this rule so that it can be sent to the Rules Review Committee for review and approval at their April 15th meeting. And I do believe that Mr. Machado and Thomas Psycho are on the call and would be willing to answer any questions that you might have.
And Ms. White, if I may add, the application fee is used 100% to pay for the external evaluators that look at our applications. Our office obviously is not making any money off this process. It is just to pay for the external evaluators.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Any other board members have a question about the inclusion? Really, it's just including the numerical amount. Okay, many thanks to our legal team for getting a great explanation of this ready for today's board morning. Let's move to discussion. And we have EICS 6. This is a new policy regarding teacher contracts for our residential schools. And so I have Dr. Derek Jordan here to explain and give you an overview of why this proposal is going to be before us.
Thank you, Ms. White. Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Truitt. I appreciate this opportunity to present policy ESDB 29 teacher contracts for your consideration. State law permits non-career status teachers that have been employed by the board for at least 3 years in a full-time permanent position to be considered for 1, 2, or 4-year contracts. Teachers at all 3 of our residential schools are only considered for 1-year contracts. The proposed policy would make the multi-year options available to them, putting us on par with many other public school units across the state when it comes to the employment of non-career teachers. Our hope as well is that this option will help us retain effective teachers. Please note that we use the policy template from the North Carolina School Boards Association, and it was vetted by the General Counsel's office. As I conclude, I'd be remiss if I didn't offer appreciation to Dr. Catherine Edmonds and attorneys Schaefer and Williams for their willingness to be thought partners with the agency schools team. Thank you, Ms. White, Mrs. Barbria Bacon, and I are happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jordan. Colleagues, do you understand what it is and why this is going to be instrumental in increasing recruitment efforts, retention efforts, consistency of school climate when you have personnel that stays in place for multi-years? It's great that this team has brought this before us for consideration. Colleagues, what questions do you have for Dr. Jordan or for Ms. Bacon? I am not seeing or hearing any. Thank you, Dr. Jordan, for your time today. That'll be back before us next month for consideration for a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, and then our final item today is EICS 7. This is KIP, ENC, and KIP Charlotte, two of our charter schools. They're requesting to utilize a charter support organization. And Mr. Machado is here to talk us through why this particular thing has come before us.
Thank you, Ms. White. KIP NC is asking to become a charter support organization for the 4 charters that KIP School currently has in North Carolina. KIP Eastern North Carolina, otherwise known as KIP ENC, has 3 charters: Gaston, Halifax, and Durham, and KIP Charlotte has 1 charter. And according to State Board Policy CHTR 021, a profit or a nonprofit, non-governmental entity can provide services for a charter school. And the services that KIP NC will be providing will be technical assistance to operate the charter schools, including the financial and academic support of it, and school board development, and payroll and curriculum development. So instead of these 4 charter schools providing these services individually, they will be done by a charter organization, which is basically a KIP internal organization. They will be providing these services, allowing this to free up manpower and money to put back into the classrooms. So they are saying that this will provide better economy of scales and be able to put more resources into the classroom. The fees that will be charged will be prorated according to the expenses and then based on student population. There'll be no money made on this new organization. They'll be strictly reimburse them for the expenses. As you know, KIP does a very good job in North Carolina providing education for mostly economically disadvantaged students, and we feel like this is a very good improvement for them to, again, improve the operations of their school. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Machado, for that organization, for that explanation. What questions do my friends have for Mr. Machado about this particular request? Mr. Machado, all I have to say is your team got off easy today. You have done an excellent job in preparing the materials for review ahead of time. So I thank you for all of the work, and also want to commend the entire staff under the Office of Charter Schools for the diligence in which they prepare materials for the Charter School Advisory Board to review over that 4 to 5 month period as they're preparing to make recommendations for the board for charter approval.
And thank you, Ms. White, for excellent presentations and your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Mr. Chair, that concludes our committee agenda for the day. I turn the table back to you.
Thank you, Ms. White.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
State Treasurer Falwell, how are you?
Mr. Treasurer.
Good. Thank you. Just briefly, it's never a bad time to talk about pensions, and just want the school board to know that some of these charter schools are part of the teasers, the pension plan. Some are not, and some get into the pension plan and realize that the employer contributions are too steep and unbudgetable, and they ask to be divorced from the pension plan. And I just wanted the school board to be aware that these happen from time to time. They're all voluntary, where the charter school itself asks to withdraw from the system. It's a very complicated actuarial process to determine what the liabilities are. Often when this happens, and we have one coming up, for example, at the next board meeting, it involves millions of dollars of liability, and we have a process, procedure, and law regarding how we handle these mathematically. So for those that want to disassociate from the pension plan, that we do this that to the benefit of with our loyalty and duty of care to everybody else in the pension plan, but also with some level of process as far as giving these charter schools the financial runway they need to actually withdraw and pay off the liability. So not a topic that any of you woke up thinking about this morning, but since we're talking about charter schools, as the chair of the Teasers board, as well as a member of the y'all's board, I just want to let you know that this does happen from time to time.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Always appreciate your insights. Vice Chair Duncan.
Well, how many of our charter schools are part of the state budget? The state retirement fund.
That is a fantastic, logical, and should have been an anticipated question that I should know off the tip of my tongue. I think the board deserves to know a factual answer, and I will get that answer to you by the close of business on Friday and distribute that information to all the school board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our treasurer? Very good. Thank you again. We'll now proceed to our last committee of the day, the Healthy Responsible Students Committee, led by Mr. Reginald Keenan. Mr. Keenan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I bring before you, along with co-chair Ms. Alan Duncan, we bring before you the amendment, the temporary extension of valid pre-participation examination because of our COVID situation, and I think Dr. Essett will take us and explain what's going on in that. Dr. Essett.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Good afternoon, Chairman Davis, Superintendent Truitt, board members. This will be, I think I'm bringing to you a request for an extension. 1 year ago, and it was early in the pandemic, the board approved an extension of the pre-participation examination form for student athletes. So any student that had a valid PPE form was allowed a 1 year extension through the end of the academic year, 2020-2021. Due to some changes in athletic schedules, for example, most of our seasons are beginning in late April now for spring sports, there will be some students that will still be competing in athletic seasons beyond the end of that academic year. So as a result, the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee of the High School Athletic Association is requesting an extension beyond the end of the academic year to June 30th, 2021. This would allow all student athletes to finish their current seasons without any interruption, and then students that would still need a valid PPE form for the beginning of athletics in the 2021-22 academic year. So everybody would be back on schedule at the beginning of the 2021-22 year. And that is the request to you as a board.
Any questions and comments from the board?
This is Treasurer Falwell again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. This is not the appropriate time, but obviously there has been some conversation around the High School Athletic Association, and I know that I presume the board is fully aware of some of those issues. And I just think, as members of the Board of Education, it's not exactly our yoga mat, but in some respects it is, because of the high participation level that our high school students have in the sports programs of our high schools. And I just it's not something that's on anybody's agenda right now, but I just think it's something that we all need to be aware of going forward.
Thank you very much. Any more comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Wendell Hall.
please go ahead, Ms. Hall.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make a comment concerning this extension request. It is a great thought through process. I commend those on who are bringing it forth. But do note that we're only talking about physical exams, not anything else. Am I correct?
Dr. Essett.
Yes, these are the pre-participation physicals for students to participate in athletics. Medical exams, yes.
Right. Thank you so much for that, and I totally in support of granting this for the student athletes. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Anyone else? If not, Mr. Chair, that concludes committee report and be action on first read.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you.
Colleagues, that concludes today's updates and committee work. We'll have the remaining committee reports during tomorrow's board meeting. I want to thank all of my colleagues, advisors, DPI staff, and others who contributed to today's meeting. And at this time, I ask for a motion to go into closed session, and note for the audience and online listeners that following closed session, the April 7th, 2021 meeting will adjourn immediately. Vice Chair Duncan.
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, section 143-318.11A.
Second.
3.
Second by Treasurer Falwell.
Just hang on, Treasurer. We hadn't got the motion on the floor yet. We'll come right to you.
To prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to NC General Statute sections 115C-321, 143-129.8D, and 167-64.6D. To consult with our attorneys in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the public body, including specifically to consider the cases of Hope County Board of Education et al. Versus the State of North Carolina and Mimic versus the State Board of Education, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, or condition of appointment of public officers or employees or prospective public officers or employees.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Duncan and second by Treasurer Falwell. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll, capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Camnitz?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford? Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes. Motion carries. Let's be in closed session at 1:30. Okay, 1:30.
7 minutes. I'm in shock.
Guys, it's still live mics? Live mics.